Oh, wow. So I just basically spoke for the last 15 minutes and realized that it wasn't on. I think I need a tech assistant to help me out here because I've been speaking for 15 minutes, going through the whole last week's parsha, this week's parsha, and I looked up in the corner and it says go live. So I guess I was talking to myself. Okay, so let's start this over again. I'll give the expedited version since we're already running late. My apologies. So just to recap, we started in the beginning of the Sikha, which is Parshas Noach. And Parshas Noach, we learned is the first week of our actual work in the week. In other words, last week we had Parshas Bereshis, which is the beginning, which is connected to God working. So God worked for 6 days. And then Shabbos Bereshis, which is the Shabbos that just passed, God rested. So it's 6 days a week, and then on the seventh day he rested. But this week, Parshas Noach, is really the beginning of our work week. It's when man started working. You know, we're used to this concept, we work for 6 days, on the seventh day we rest. But the reality of it is that God worked for 6 days and rested on the seventh day. Where man actually, Shalom Bracha, I forgot to hit live though. I was speaking for 15 minutes by myself, and then I looked up in the corner, I realized I never hit the live button. So I'm just recapping. So this is the first week where we actually work. Last week was the week that God worked and then rested on Shabbat. But man was created 3 hours before Shabbos. So the reality of it is the first thing we did, well, after we sinned, was kept Shabbos. And then we went into the work week. So this week, and this week's Parsha, is also a general Shabbos, just like Shabbos Bereshis was. Our sages teach us the way we conduct ourselves on Shabbos Bereshis draws down that energy for the entire year. And the Rebbe says this is also a general Shabbos, this Shabbos coming up from Parshas Noach. And in fact, in a way, it's even higher than Shabbos Parshas Bereshis. And why is that? Because this is the first actual work week. So we took all the energy that God used to create the world, and now we're entering into the world and working and using that energy to work the world, if you will. Prepare the world as a dwelling place for God. And it's known that the title of the Parsha is connected to the content of the Parsha. And Noach comes from the same Hebrew root word as menucha, which means to rest. And therefore, the entire Parsha of Noach is connected to Shabbos. Because when do we really rest? We rest on Shabbos. And Shabbos is the day of menucha, it's the day of rest. And therefore, all of Parshas Noach is directly connected to the resting which takes place on Shabbos. And just general, we're running behind because, as I said, I did this to myself. So just one of the concepts that our sages teach us, that the reason why Noach brought menucha, or rest, into the world is he brought farming tools. So we learn that Adam and Chava were placed in the garden, and God said, work the garden. And the garden is a metaphor, not just for a physical garden, but for the entire world. We know that the Rebbe's inaugural address is Rebbe Basi Lagani, literally Basi Lagani Osikhala, that I've entered my garden, my sister, and my bride. That he's talking about entering it from Bartan from Shir Shirim, that the whole concept of God coming to his garden is this entire world is his garden. And we've all been enlisted to be his partners to help make this garden or this world to a beautiful place. And one of the punishments that Adam and Chava received from the sin was that they now have to work very, very difficultly. And it says, from the sweat of your brow, you must work, and there'll be thorns and thistles, and it'll be a hard work. Talking about our work of making this place a dwelling place for God. And Noach brought us farming tools. And that's literal, but it also means from a metaphorical standpoint that in this week's Parsha, we're going to learn out how we have certain tools to enable us to make the world a dwelling place for God, to make the world a garden for Hashem. Okay, and we see, as we just started saying, that this is the first Shabbos that takes place, this upcoming Shabbos, after our work in the 7-day work week. The Shavua HaRishon, the first week of the first week of actual work, Sheklal Kol HaShavuos B'Meshech HaShana Dochein Mudgash Bo Klal Zeinin HaShabbos Shenenim Menucha Noach Nirchei Nirchei Shabbeisa K'Adam HaShavuos B'Melachtoi. And this is really the first Shabbat that we're resting. That man has actually gone to work. This is the first week after Bereshis, where we enter into the world and we're actually working the world. And again, we're not referring necessarily to our occupation that we earn our parnasa from, but our work, hard labor. I got some hard labor. Awesome. Your hard labor is good. You're correct. It is work is very good. It keeps us occupied mentally and physically. And this is the time that we actually entered into the world and we worked, and we're resting from our first week of work, entering into the world after God created the world in last week's Parsha of Bereshis. And it comes out from this that Shabbos Bereshis included the service of all the days of the week. The Shabbos Parsha's Noach, I'm skipping the brackets. Klalo u'mechaveh even haboichim the avoda b'kol yemei hashavua kafi shehu b'foal. In other words, last week's Parsha's Bereshis, God created the world. We know God created the world in 6 days, and the seventh day He rested. And what that means for us is that in last week, God gave us the koach, He gave us the power by imbuing His power into us as His partners in creation and bringing that power into the world. This is the week that we take God's power and we utilize that power, and it's manifest through the individual, through our abilities, that we have to take the energy and the power that God gave us and turn it into reality, right? One of the greatest gifts we have is time. And unfortunately, people waste time, which is a horrible thing, because time you don't get back. You don't get back. Money you can get back. It's not good to waste money, but you could waste it and then potentially earn more money and then say, okay, well, I made again. But time, it's gone. And every single moment of the day, we have power that God has given us. And ultimately, what we choose to do with that power, what we choose to do with that energy, and whether we choose to use it to be God's partner in creation and make the world a good place, a godly place, a holy place, or we choose to make the world a horrible place of destruction, that is what gives us free choice, not what makes us human. Base. So we have to explain a little bit of the connection and the relevance to the content of this week's Parsha. The Parsha is Bereshis and Noach. And we see that there are similar concepts in Bereshis and Noach. Brias v'kiyam ha'olam, that God created and sustains the world. Parshas Bereshis l'sopar oidos b'brias ha'olam. In the beginning in Parshas Bereshis, in last week's Sikha, in last week's Torah portion, is referring to God creating the world. Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz. God created the heavens and He created the earth. Ele toidos, just as there's just so many deep and beautiful concepts in these sikhs that we can't, really expound on everything. But this is just a basic concept we should understand, that in the beginning of last week's Parsha, it says, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz. God created the heavens and the earth. Now, heaven is not something that when, it's just a depository for souls when we die that we go up. This is a real reality that exists. In other words, the earth is the physical reality and heavens are the spiritual reality. And what we see with our physical eye makes up a millifraction of the true reality. And by learning Torah and by getting closer to Hashem, we are able to tap into the reality of what's going on above in the spiritual worlds and use that power to benefit all of creation and ourselves and God in this physical world. So heaven is just not a resting place that we look forward to going to, one day after 120 years. It's the spiritual dimension, if you will, the reality of the world that we always have to remember Everything in the world has a body, which is like the earth, and a soul, which is like the heavens. Okay. And these are the offspring of heaven and earth that God created. But Parshas Noach mesupar oidos ha'havatacha al kiyam ha'olam. And in Parshas Noach, it's expressed the fulfillment of the world. In other words, in Parshas Bereshis was the power of how God created the world. And Parshas Noach discusses how God will sustain the world or keep it in existence through our assistance. Oy kol yimei chayecha, oy kol yimei ha'aretz, lo sheloisi. Zois ois habrias asher ani noisim b'nei u'b'neichem. That this is the covenant that I am making, God says, with my offspring, if you will. The doris ha'elam es keshti, and asati be'enim v'yisei la'ois b'rias b'nei u'ben ha'aretz. And God literally basically said, I will never destroy the world again, as he did in the times of Noah. And he signed the rainbow as a brit, as a covenant between God and the offsprings and the earth, basically saying, I will agree to continue to sustain the world. In other words, we don't have to listen to the people out there with the signs who are going around saying that the end of the world is coming, because God has already, in this week's Parsha, made a covenant with Noah and with all of creation that he will continue to sustain the world. And the difference between Shabbos Bereshis and Shabbos Noach, or Parshas Bereshis and Parshas Noach, that in the Parsha of Bereshis went through the discussion of the completion of the world. Literally connected to the work of God, that God created the world in the beginning. But king sha'olam yured memedrega seikafi shetrek lois mitzad ratzayna kodesh baruch hu lo yachol lihiyos kiyam ha'olam. Comes bar the parshas say for parshas Bereshis Ras Hashem kol rabba ra'as ha'adam ba'aretz Nahem Hashem yoymer Hashem emcha. The parshas Noach medubar oidish lemas ha'olam kafi shehu mitzad ratzmai. שגם במצב ירוי נויסן כוח לבירור זכור האדם על ידי תשובה לכן בבני אין הארץ רasa kashes בעניין גויים. Okay, so basically God in Parshas Bereshis said, I'm creating the world, and what I'm bringing forth, if you will, is creation. And in Parshas Noach, God basically said, now I'm giving the power of creation over to man. And man will have the ability through our work to continue to cause God to sustain and keep the world in existence. And how and what is our work? The Rebbe says, tshuva. Tshuva literally meaning returning. In other words, God knows that we're flesh and blood. He knows we're going to screw up. He knows we're going to make mistakes. He knows we're not always going to listen and do the right thing. But at the same time, he wants us to acknowledge that he's the boss, that we don't create the world. This is not our world. We don't create it. We're not in control, and we're not in power. Regardless of what anyone may think, they're not in control of their lives. They're not in control of anything. God is in control of the world. And so he wants us to continuously sustain the world through tshuva, meaning that at any given point, at any moment, wherever we are, we have the ability to do the right thing, the godly thing, the thing of concern for others and their well-being, or we could do the wrong thing, the selfish thing, and not care about others and just do whatever we want. And the world sustains, the Rebbe says, through tshuva. And the power to do that, to continue doing tshuva, continue returning to our mission and our work, comes from God. Okay. That literally our work is to refine the world. And this was done through the covenant with Noah. That through our service of refining and purifying the world, this lower world, because we're not empowered to purify the upper worlds, because we're here down below in the physical world. And the reality of it is, the more work we do down here to rectify this world, the more we rectify the upper worlds by adding light and energy throughout all the worlds, even the spiritual worlds above. Literally, that God has given us the power to sustain the world and to help him be his partners in bringing the world to its ultimate state of culmination and the ultimate state of fulfillment, which is a dir b'tachtonim, a dwelling place below. The Parshas Bereshis mudgash beikar ba'amora mitzvah oidam kafishu mitzara akavana elyoina b'klach. The Parshas Noach mudgash beikar ba'amora mitzvah oidam kafishu mitzara avodas adam. Before the Rebbe says, generally speaking, to put it a different way, and Parshas Bereshis, which is last week, the emphasis is on God creating the world from above and through his power bringing the world into existence. And in Parshas Noach, which we're in now, the main emphasis is on the lower aspects of creation, which is our service to take, in Hebrew it's called koach and fual, or power and execution, or reality, or deed, or doing, or bringing about, if you will. So this is the first time where we really have the emphasis on, now we have the power that God gave us. What are we going to do with it, right? We have this energy. Energy is consumed and is available in a multitude of things. It's first and foremost in time. What are we going to use our time for? And also money. Money is a very viable energy form, and money you could do great things with, or you could do destructive things with. And that's all about us. That's all about God saying, I'm giving you free choice. I'm giving you tools. I'm giving you a world. I'm giving you the capacity to earn a living and to use your time wisely. What are you going to do with it? It says that the most painful thing that a neshama, that a soul experiences, and our sages teach us that, it says that one hour of suffering in Gehenna, it's called amongst the Goyim hell, but it's we really call it Gehenna, which is basically a purgatory, if you will, but it's really what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a place of punishment. It's a place of rectifying, of fixing up the blemishes of our soul that got messed up in this world. So that it says 1 hour in Gehenna is more painful than all the suffering in an entire lifetime. And it's known the most painful thing for a neshama when it goes into to Gan Eden, before it goes into Gan Eden, when it has to go through the process of Gehenna, is the realization of all the time it wasted in this world. When we are taken out of this world and shown a glimpse of the world of truth, and we realize this entire world was just a giant test from God, and now it's too late because the time is over. We can't do anything anymore. That is the most painful thing the soul experiences in Gehenna. The realization that every moment was precious and could have been used to be God's partner to build an eternal reality of life, of goodness and godliness in this world, and instead it was squandered and wasted on nonsense. And that is the most painful thing the soul experiences. Anyways, continuing on. So, Shagan ba'olam atachton shein tachton lematu mimenu nasa matzav shel biro v'hazuchoch olam hadash re'eh. Literally, that we have the power to literally renew the world. So we literally can see it as a new world. It says when Noah came out of the teva, out of the ark, the world was completely brand new. Brand new. We have the ability to live like that. It says our sages teach us we should serve Hashem like a child. A child every single day is like, amazement, it's wonderment. A child wakes up and the first time a child sees a sky or a new face or water, it's like walking around like, wow, we walk around like zombies because this is all old scenery. But the reality of it is when we dig deeper into reality and we work the world through Torah and mitzvahs, through fulfilling God's covenant with us and making the world a godly place, we're literally digging deeper and deeper into and underneath the physical coarseness of this world that blocks godliness. And the more we dig, the more godly energy gets revealed, and the more the world looks brand new. The Havel to make a million separation. But if anyone has ever taken LSD before, and I can speak from experience, when I used to dabble in hallucinogenic drugs before I started my journey back to Judaism, you literally feel like you're just like fascinated, like the world is like wow, like you could look at a leaf for like hours because you just see, hey, what's up, Yaakov? You just see godly energy in the world. It's like we pick up a leaf and we throw it on the floor. When you're in hallucinogenic drugs, LSD, ayahuasca, whatever it is, these things that open up our deep pineal gland, if you will, that release this energy, this godly energy. Everything is fascinating. Yeah, taking the blinders off, we see, wow, like everything is alive. We see a godly energy, a godly life force in all of creation, in the plants and the trees and everything. And that we have that ability, every one of us, by refining and purifying the world and revealing the godly energy in the world. We could live in a constant state of elevation, if you will, of spiritual highness, where we just every day is brand new. It's exciting. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna go to work, walk around like zombies. It's like, wow, what opportunities are God presenting to me today? You know what? There's a chance to help people right now. There's a chance to do good deeds. I could help another person. I could give some tzedakah. I could say a kind word to a person. I could inspire another person. I could take my money and use it to help another. Like, all these opportunities every single moment of the day. And we have the opportunity to see that in a beautiful way if we work. Now, that's what Parshas Noach is about. It's about working. It's about revealing the godliness in this world and making everything fresh or brand new. Just like when Noach came out of the Deva, when Noach came out of the ark, the world was completely brand new. God flushed the whole world in a giant mikveh in water, and it refined it. It's one of the reasons that observant Jews go to the mikveh every single day. And I can't recommend the importance of going to the mikveh every day amongst Hasidim. It's a basic concept. In nature, absolutely. When amongst Hasidim in Russia, Hasidim used to go on the ice. It was freezing. They would literally break the ice. They couldn't put their bare feet on the ice because their skin would instantly, the ice would instantly cling to their skin and it would rip their skin off. They would start bleeding. They would literally cut holes in the ice in the freezing winter just to go into the mikvah, because when it's literally taking your whole being and like flushing it out and replenishing your energy and giving you a fresh perspective on the world. Okay, Gimel. And I'm sorry we're running a little bit late today. I spent the first 15 minutes talking to myself. I realized we weren't live, but we'll make it up. Okay, but I'll make Yoiser. Let's get a little deeper. בפועל, בפרשת נוח ותוסף, אילוי גדול יוסר לגבי המור המצה שמצר הבריאה, כרומה בסיועים וחויסם של פרשת בראשית אידיס, ולעשה של נוח. נוח מצר חן בעיני הוויה. So we see, in addition to the service and actuality that we are now beginning, and we're doing this week, that takes place in addition to what happened last week in Parshas Bereshis. We see it's alluded to at the end of last week's Parsha, where it basically ends up where God was talking about how the whole world was corrupted, and horrific things were going on. Animals and humans were having sexual relations. You can't even fathom what was going on in the world. Cannibalism, bestiality. There was horrific things were literally taking place. It was just a complete Sodom and Gomorrah, if you will. And all of a sudden it says at the end, But Noach found favor in God's eyes. But Brias Ha'olam Kasiv, Reishis Bara Elokim Es HaShamayim Es Haaretz. And we know, as we said, it's written that in last week's Parsha, it says that Hashem created the heavens and he created the earth. Lama Beis Pamim Elokim. Now, Amar, but Maseh Bereshis. It's brought down that the name Elokim, which is God's name that he used, if you will, to create nature. Elokim, or Hateva, it's the same gematria, the same numerical equivalent, which is basically, which is basically the numerical value of nature, and God's name Elokim is the same. In other words, when God created the world, he took his energy, his power of the name Havaya, which was too powerful. It's like the sun would have burnt the whole earth if there wasn't an ozone, if there wasn't a protective layer. And he enclosed it in the name Elokim, which is God's name he used to create creation, if you will. And that name Elokim is mentioned 32 times in conduction with the creation of the world, Maseh Bereshis. Kivan Shabrias Ha'olam Hu Al Yidei Shem Elokim. We know that the world was created through the name Elokim. Shepirushay Ba HaYicholet U'Ba HaKoichos Kulam Shekayal HaDaregas Elokish Shaychos Ha'olam. Elokim Gematria Tevet. That's what I just said. That this is the name that God used to bring about creation, and that the name Elokim is the same gematria or numerical equivalent to Hateva, meaning the nature. In other words, everything is God. You know, if you ask a scientist, or you ask, pretty much a lot of people, like why does the sun, rise in the morning, and the moon come out at night, and the stars, and why the birds go this way? That's nature. Nature basically means we have no way possibly to explain this because it's impossible. So we just put a stamp on it and say it's nature. Now we're good. Nature. No, nature is God. That's his name, Elokim, that he used to create the world. That was mentioned 32 times in the beginning of this last week, which is Parshas Bereshis. 32, of course, is also the gematria, the numerical equivalent of Lev, which is the heart, referring to the fact that the Torah is literally a blueprint of our heart, of our service of our heart. Gam Mesiras Nefesh V'Hamshech HaParsha V'Yoyim Eser Havai. No, Gam not Mesiras. Shana Amar V'Hamshech HaParsha V'Yoyim Asoyis Havai Elokim Aretz V'Shamayim. And further, we see in the continuation of the parsha, it says, and in the day, God, V'Yom Asad, this is the day that Hashem Havaya Elokim. Aretz and Shemayim, the heaven and the earth and the heavens. This is referring to how God took his name Havaya, again, which is the tetragrammaton, as they call it, Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is the name of God that is too powerful, if you will. It's too much concentrated energy to create the world, or we would not be able to sustain. We wouldn't have free choice. We would totally be, nullified to God's energy, like the angels in the upper world, because we'd literally feel God's presence 24 hours a day, and we would have no capacity to have free choice, because we would, of course, do what God wants us to do, because we would see him sittingly staring at us. We'd feel his energy. It's how it's going to be when Moshiach comes. Anyway, so he took that name Havaya and enclosed it in the name Elokim, which is a filter, if you will, a way of concealing his godly energy to give us this key ingredient, what makes us human, which is free choice, and allow us to make our own decisions, if you will. That even the power to bring out the world comes from the name Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei, the higher name. Nevertheless, in actuality, to create the world, God had to take this name Havaya and enclose it in the name Elokim. And therefore, we see the name Havaya is not revealed to the creations, because it's too much of a godly energy. At least for now, when Moshiach comes, it will be revealed. But for now, what is revealed to us is the name Elokim, literally the name of God that is concealed, if you will, in the nature. Right? We live in a world where to the most uninitiated people struggle to find the existence of God. You'll say, you exist? I'll say, of course I exist. Does God exist? I don't know. Maybe not. Sometimes I think so, but maybe not all the time. Because that's the way God did it. He set it up in such a way to conceal himself, and that's through the name Elohim. And the unique thing about the service of Noah, who we said found favor in the eyes of God, that through the revealing of this in the world, the name Elohim, Shem Havaya Shalamayram Ha'olam. Let me back up. That through revealing in the world the name Havaya, that is above from the world, namely, that the existence of the world that was created through the name Elohim reveals the name Havaya. And not only that, we have the ability to acknowledge and recognize that Havaya is Elohim, meaning that the very God that created all of the world, that is above the world, that is completely removed from the world, is the very God that is involved in every detail of the world. And God is just as omnipresent and omniscient in every aspect of your life as he is in heaven. God is no less present in this world when you go to work, when you're eating, 24 hours a day. He's in you, he's around you, he surrounds you, he sees everything you do, he hears everything you do, he feels everything you do, he's aware of every thought in the deepest recesses of your heart. And at the same time, he's completely removed from the world and loftier and above in the heavens. There's no contradiction. Both exist simultaneously. That the truth of the matter is that this world of concealment and hiding over is really concealing and hiding over the name Havaya, or God's upper name, his more spiritual name, if you will, his more powerful energy. And that through revealing the name Havaya and revealing it and penetrating it to the existence of the world through the name Elohim, and then it draws down and reveals a level even higher from the name Havaya, the upper Havaya, completely removed from the world. And then adding on to elevation after elevation, and this is, we see, level after level, and this is referring to the 7 times at the end of the Nila prayer and Yom Kippur, where every Jew around the world says, Havayahu Elohim, Havayahu Elohim. We say it 7 times. And again, there's just so much depth and the sikhas that we could sit and bring about this stuff for hours, but we have a limited time together, so I don't want to get into all the details of this, but just briefly, there's 7 spiritual worlds. Maybe you've heard this concept when you were a kid. You used to play the game, what's it called? 7 Minutes in Heaven? 7 in Heaven? Or something like that, Lavdil. But all these concepts of the number 7, lucky 7, all these things, it's related to the fact that there's 7, 7 is the completion of nature. We know there's 7 days a week. And there's also 7 rakias, or spiritual worlds, above our physical world of Asiya. Between this world of Asiya and the higher worlds of Yetzirah, Bria, and Atzilus, there's 4 main worlds of creation. Then there's a 5th world, Adam Kadmon, which is primordial man, which is above creation, even of spiritual creation. But for all intents and purposes, we're concerned with this physical world here, which is called the world of Asiya, and there's 7 spiritual worlds above us. And we know that God's divine presence, his Shekhinah, if you will, went up and removed itself from this physical world after the sin of Adam. That's the whole first Maimer of the Rebbe, Basi Lagani. Anyways, the point he's referring to now is that we say 7 times in Yom Kippur at the end of Ne'ilah, Havayahu Elohim. And basically it's referring to the fact that in every one of these rakiyas, which are reflected by the name Elohim, which are part of creation, there's Havaya, all the way down to this physical world. And it's just, this little sentence is just a snapshot of everything that we're talking about right now, and that why Noah found favor in God's eyes, because he was the first person to reveal, if you will, God and his message. He didn't, it wasn't like Abraham, that's next week, where Abraham really went out of his way and really went out of his way to help other people and to bring other people close to God. Noah kind of sat in his place, but still he didn't deny. People came to him like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm building an ark. He's like, why? He's like, because God's going to destroy the world, because he's pissed. You want to come along? Come along. But he was the first one to reveal the fact that this world, for the name Elohim, that conceals God, really is Havaya. In other words, God is in existence in every aspect of creation, every little detail. The reason why people sin or go against God's will is because they don't believe he's watching. They don't think he cares. Like, what does God care about me? What like he has nothing else better to do but to care about me? Yeah, because he creates you. He creates all of us. And if he creates all of us, we'll have a purpose. And if we have a purpose, he's intimately involved in that purpose in every aspect of our lives, not just up there. Sure, he's running the show. He's running all the worlds, the heavens, all the earths, every little detail in every one of our individual lives. And that is the fact that Havayu Elohim, that the very world that conceals God is still God. And our work, our mission in this world is to reveal God in this world that conceals it. Damer, who told us what? You had a XRP tacos. You had a question. Who told us that? What were you referring to? I know I'm giving a lot of information and kind of rapid fire, but there's a lot to get through here. Okay, Damer. Yesh Lamar, there's to say, She'inin Zeh, Rumaz, B'toichna, Shal Parsha, Noah, Oidus, Kiyama, Oilam, B'oifen, Lo, Shevoisei, V'habrias es Kashti, Nasati, Be'enyam. Literally, that we see in Parshas Noah, that we see the sustainment of the world in such a way that God made a promise that he will not destroy the world again. And he sealed that promise, that covenant, with the rainbow. Lo Shivois. Yo Yishivoisai. Kamavur Makama Patmi. Shamanhagas Ha'elam Ba'efen Tamidi. Leloi Shinoi Ba'hafsek. Kamo Hashemes, Hareach, Chavim, Kal HaGilgulim, but Sivuvim, Tamide, literally the Rebbe is saying right now, it's brought down in many places, that the way that God conducts the world is that it's continuous, with no changes and no stopping. In other words, God's hands are on all of creation, but he set it into a function in such a way that it continues to exist. Like the sun and the moon and the stars and all the planets and all the Rikias and all the spheres, everything continues to keep moving. The Rambam goes into depth explaining how God creates all of these things and he puts them into motion, and everything keeps going without any change. Nikar Nizgala Koach Ein Sof. Shlamara Mahadin Mahadbala La'olam. Ani Havaya Lo Shiniti. And this is through the power of the Ein Sof. One of God's names is Ein Sof, meaning without end, meaning that God's infinite. He always was and he always will be. And this is what it says in Lo Shiniti, meaning that God is not affected by the world. The creation of the world did not cause any change in God. God is, we have to understand, we think of God, God is not spiritual. God is not physical. God creates spirituality and physicality. To say he's spiritual is limiting him. To say he's not physical is also limiting him, because he is. Because he creates physical and spiritual. He's above it. And therefore, creation had no effect and no bearing on God, because he's completely, as much as he's involved in creation, above it. And therefore, he created all this stuff, set everything into motion, and at the same time, it did not affect any change in God. Ani lo shiniti. I did not change, is what God tells us. Ve'ez kashti nasati be'inyan keshes he hashtakefelot karni hashemesh b'hanyin. Hainu shigame enyan ha'olam min ha'aretz. Nasa v'zechach ad shmistakef bo ha'or hashemesh havayim. Basically, nim elu kishurim zeded. Shekiyo im ha'olam mudgash oire hakasha. Hakesha. Kamoshka su zois ois habris asher akiyam moisi. Beni then call lesar asher al ha'aretz. Talking about the covenant that God made with the creation, with the rainbow, for all flesh and all of the earth. Shemazem meruma shemetziyoyse shokal lesar asher al ha'aretz. And this is so that all of creation and all of the world shall acknowledge and recognize that it's only through God's power that God continues to create the world and bring it into existence from nothing to something every single second of the day. If it wasn't for God's power to do so, we would not be able to exist. If God forbid God decided he does not want the world to continue anymore, the world would completely cease and return to a state of tohu, of nothingness as before creation. And it's God's power that creates everything and keeps it in existence. In other words, God didn't create the world and then just kind of like put it on an autopilot and sit back and watch television and says, okay, now I did my job, everything's running by itself. No. He gives us free choice and he allows us to make decisions. But make no mistake about it, every single thing that's happening in the world, whoever wins the presidency, whatever happens in this world, every little detail of creation, God is taking it and going like this, and moving it and forming it and taking it exactly where he wants it to go. And Moshiach is going to come regardless of what we do or we don't do. But we have the opportunity to be God's partner in that reality. But only God can create something from nothing. And this is what it says now. And this is the name Havaya. What is Havaya? Relation mehaveh, that he brings into existence. Including the world of Havaya that is above the world. Haya, Haveh, V'hiya, Ke'echad. Havaya is literally the root of that he was, he is, and he will be. Meaning God is above time. Time is a creation. God is a creator. He created time, just like he creates all of us. And every single thing that happened in our lives, God allowed to happen. And every single thing that is happening in our life right now, God allows to happen. Everything that will happen, God allows to happen. In other words, we have no control over what happens in our lives. We may think we're in control, but everyone realizes at some point in their life when God gives them a little patch or redirects them, or God forbid makes them sick, or does something to make them realize that we're not in charge. As the old saying goes, there's no atheist in a foxhole, right? When your life is flashing in front of your eyes, everyone turns to God because they have a moment of lucidity where they realize there is a creator. I got to be accountable to somebody. And this is God's name, Havaya, that it shows that, again, we can't control what happens in our life, but we can control what we do about it. In other words, you could lose whatever happens to your life. You could lose everything. You could lose the money. You could lose but don't lose the lesson. Stop and say, why did God put me through this? You may not have the answer right away, but you can pray to God. You can talk to God. He's our Father. Say, why is this happening to me? God, please give me the strength to get through this. And please give me the chokhmah, give me the wisdom to understand why I'm going through this test. And what can I learn from this? And how can I use this to improve my service of you and my life? And that's why we see that God was, he is, and he will be. It's all the same God. Everything that happens in our life is coming from the same divine energy. Shem ha'etzem, that's why it's called God's essence, his main name. And further, the power of his essence, of God's atzmos, to bring about creation from nothing to something. shakadma v'chas v'shalom. That only God has the ability to create. So that's why people get so caught up on things in the world that we have no control over. I'm not saying you shouldn't take an interest in votes. You should vote, okay. But the insanity, the amount of time and energy people spend on a daily basis. How are you voting for him? How are you voting for him? And they're screaming and yelling and fighting. And then for what? For what? Nothing in this world could happen if God doesn't allow it to happen. Any world dictator, any problems, any things, God in 1 second could, boom, cause him to drop dead. That's not the time to get into the famous story with the Rebbe and Stalin. Hoorah, he caused Stalin to drop dead. The idea is that nothing in this world is beyond God. So what are we getting so caught up about all this stuff for? Pay attention to it, but don't get stuck in it. Realize we're on a mission. And only God created the world from something, from nothing. And it's through the essence of God that is above creation. And nothing existed before God. Nothing, God alone existed before time. And God continues to bring all of reality into existence every single second. Only Hashem alone could do such a thing. You could bring me the brightest and best scientist in the world and give them $100 billion grants. They cannot create something from nothing. It's impossible. They could do genetic cloning. They could take, this entity and mix it with this entity and make that entity. And but to create nothing out of thin air, impossible. Only God could do such a thing. And therefore, since nothing existed before God, and since God is the one who brings everything to existence, it says that only Him who has the power to bring about existence from absolutely nothing whatsoever. And we can recognize in this physical world its true existence. And this is Moshiach consciousness, by the way. Moshiach consciousness is that we acknowledge and we recognize that even the physical reality of the world is God. Everything in the world is God. Redemption is about achdus, it's about unity. It's about the acknowledgement that everything exists within God and everything is God. When we try to separate, when people say, I'm independent. What does that mean? You're independent from who? From your mommy and your daddy? This doesn't make you independent. You have your own apartments, you're independent? No, you're not independent. If you were really independent from God, you'd be dead. Because it's impossible to be independent from God. Because God creates you. And God allows His energy to go inside of you. And if God forbid He pulled that energy out of you, you wouldn't be independent. You'd be dead. Hey, in addition to this, in addition to this, we see the elevation and the elevating of the world through the service and actuality, and that's the emphasis in this week's Parshas Noach, regarding the situation that took place in the beginning of creation. Parshas Lech Lecha, the Kriyas the Tefillah Mincha, Shabbos Parshas Noach, and we see this hinted in Parshas Lech Lecha, which is the parsha of next week. And there's a amazingly deep connection between these first three parshas of the Torah, Bereshis, Noach, and Lech Lecha, including the main players of each parsha, Adam, Noach, and Abraham. But it's beyond the scope of what we're going through right now. Anyway, so this is hinted on in Mincha that we start reading the Torah from Parshas Lech Lecha. In the completion of the 7 days of the week of the service of the world. In other words, just to recap, we had 7 days of creation, or 6 days of creation, the seventh day of rest. Then we moved into Noach. That was Bereshis. In Noach, we went for 6 days of work. That's our work, meaning our first opportunity to literally do what God wants in this world and to use the tools that God gave us to make the world a godly place. And then on Shabbat, we're going to rest from our work. And then on Shabbos and Parshas in Mincha, we start reading Lech Lecha, which is the beginning of the upcoming week. And what is the upcoming week? Lech Lecha Mora'al Halicha Amitis. Shu be'ein ruch l'makoyim ha'kodim. Lech Lecha literally means to go. Literally, Lech Lecha, to go to you or for you, meaning go inside of you for your own good. Dig deep inside. The answers to all of our problems in the world don't exist out there. They exist in here and in here. So I want to hurt you. Our head and our heart, and also in our lower part. That this is where we have to go into to reveal our true essence. And the Rebbe says, true Lech Lecha, literally like going, really means, it says, but to a place, to true Lech Lecha, meaning to really go out of yourself, to really discover who you are. You have to go to a place that's not comparable at all to where you were previously. In other words, you gotta jump. We all reach a point in our life where we have to trust God and jump and just go out of our boundaries and our limitations. And furthermore, through revealing our true essence of who we really are, God says, I will show you. I will reveal to you who you really are. Beautiful. In other words, God says, when you trust me, I don't mean trust me, Matt the Suburban, I mean, God says, I'm speaking Ki'ilu, as if I'm saying like I'm God, right? So if you trust me and you listen to me and you take the tools that I gave you and you live a life according to the way I created you, and you stop searching in everyone else's garden, and you put your energy and focus on your own garden, and you put your energy and focus towards using my tools of my Torah and my mitzvahs to enhance the world in your part of the world that I gave you, I will reveal to you who you really are. In other words, we're all living in an illusion. The only way to find yourself is inside, is by connecting to God. You don't find yourself by going to the mall and getting a new pair of shoes or dyeing your hair a couple different colors. That's not how you find yourself. You find yourself by connecting to your essence and considering that God created us. That's the key to unlock who we really are. And the Rebbe said, and this is, so in other words, I don't want to keep being repetitive, but just to drill this idea home. In Parshas Bereshis, the first week, God created the world. He gave us the power of his power of creation to use in this week, Parshas Noach, to fix up the world. And then next week in Lech Lecha, God's saying, now that you have these tools and you started working, jump. Now go to a place completely different. Go deep inside of you. Dig inside and really work to uncover who you are. And the more you trust in me and the more you listen to me and the more you follow my will, the more I will reveal to you who you truly are. And through the true service and actuality in the lower part of the world, by revealing the true existence of every yid, of every one of the Jewish people, in every situation, in every place, that is literally connected and unified together with God. And not only that, but through our service of refining and purifying the world, we draw down and reveal God into the world. That's a dual bonus. Not only do you connect to your essence and you reveal who you truly are, you're revealing God in your surroundings. You literally have the ability to affect the people around you. Yesh Lamar, there is to say, that this concept of going, literally talking about Lech Lecha next week, also into a level of godliness, that the true revealing of this matter is the oneness of Havaya, or Havayahu Elokim. Shagam Shem Elokim, Shakash Ra'im Babrias Ha'olam, that the name Elokim is connected to the creation of the world. Kimitziyoisei Amitis Hu, Shem Havaya Lamayla Ha'olam. And its true existence is the name Havaya, which is above from the world. In other words, it's all connected. The more you work on yourself, the more you work to refine yourself, the more you work to reveal your true godly core, the more you will start to see God in everything. And the name Elohim that conceals God will no longer conceal him, but will reveal him. It says when Moshiach comes, it says your teacher, your master will no longer be concealed from your eyes. We'll see godliness in everything. We have the ability to do that now. Again, it's digging deep. It's getting into our being. It's getting into our kishkas. The choicest of all right now the head, the forerunner, we will, of the offspring of the Jewish people is Yaakov. Yaakov Avinu became Yisrael. But it says in Mashiach, the choicest of the Avos will be Yitzchak. The Yitzchak Avinu, which represents Gevurah or strength or discipline, will be higher than Yaakov Avinu. How is it possible? Because what did Yitzchak do? And I don't want to get too far of the scope of what we're doing. I want to get back into the teachings inside here. But what did Yitzchak do? He dug wells. What does it mean he dug wells? He just worked on himself and went deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And the deeper you get in your being and the more godly energy you reveal into you, the more it will reveal into the whole world around you. They say in the parlance of the secular language, right? It's called the power of attraction, right? The law of attraction. You ever been in a room with like a real dynamic, energized person? Everyone just flocks to them. It's like a magnet because that person is alive. She's alive, whoever it may be, because they're connected to who they are and their mission and their purpose, and it radiates from them. How much more so when you're connecting to your godly essence and your godly purpose? It just brings that godly energy into the world, and that name Elohim that conceals God starts revealing the Havaya that it's concealing. Okay, Vav. There's a little asterisk, which means that there's a break, if you will, in the flow or the concepts we're discussing. They all connect, of course, but it's shifting gears a little bit. Al pi hamuar ha'omer la'ayol sheb'shavua ha'parshas Noach kloi lahavod ha'kol hashana kulo kafi shehu b'fu'al. Move on. But according to what we said above, that the week of Parshas Noach includes the service of the entire year in general, in actuality. In other words, just like we say Parshas Bereshis and Shabbos Bereshis is indicative of the energy we draw down to the whole year. Parshas Shabbos Noach is indicative of the energy from the work we did all week long to draw down to the entire year. Sheyesh Shabbos Kodesh, but Parshas Noach, who Hazman Misa'im, Cheshbon Tzedek Shalavot B'Fal Hashana Hadasha Shemitziim Kava B'Toicha. In other words, the Rebbe says in this week's Shabbos, in Shabbos Parshas Noach, it's an opportune time, it's an auspicious time, if you will, that we need to do a righteous accounting. That we have to literally, this is the time to kind of like we do in Rosh Hashanah, or in the month of Elul, if you will. We take a spiritual stock taking, where we look backwards at our entire year past of our actual work, and we say, wow, I now just finished my first week of work. And I don't mean that if you're a real estate agent, you know, wow, I sold 2 homes this week. No, I'm talking about your work of God, your work of refining this world and purifying it for a godly purpose. We now have to say, okay, we will spend this whole week of our work, of working and revealing God in the world, and our davening, and our mitzvot, and our Torah learning. And now, on this Shabbos, we're supposed to reflect on how we want to go about this upcoming year, and how we want to reconnect to our Creator in a greater way than ever before. And it's just it's such the irony is mind-boggling how when it comes to business or career, every person will tell you, every business owner will tell you, you got to work harder than you did yesterday, right? There's a saying that nothing will spoil tomorrow's success like today's success. When you start getting comfortable and you continue to do the same thing over and over again, you don't grow. And any businessman will constantly say, okay, last quarter we did X amount of dollars. This quarter we want to do Y amount of dollars. But when it comes to our spiritual stock taking and God, no one pays attention. Countless religious Jews just go through life, they put on their tefillin and they daven on their prayer, and they just keep doing the same thing over and over again, like nothing. And they want to know why nothing's changing in their life. But they'll invest all their energy and time trying to fix their business. They're trying to finish their parnasah, their income. And the irony of it is, if they invested that same energy into God and improving in Torah and mitzvahs, they would instantly see an increase in their income. I'm living proof. I tell people all the time, one of the greatest business decisions I made was we're going back now. I've been back in the States after coming back from Israel been here, I think, 12 years, 11 years. How long have I been here? 11, 12 years, something like that. And after 3-4 years of working, of starting my own law firm again, partnering with my partner, I said, I'm not working anymore on Fridays. I'm cutting off 20% of my work week. And on Fridays, I went on Mitzvahim and I put tefillin on Jews all day long. And I started making more money. I saw a significant increase in my income by working 20% less. Makes sense? Well, depends how you look at it. If you're looking at it according to God's world, it makes perfect sense. Because I spent my energy on helping others, on fulfilling my divine purpose. And God said, oh, okay, now you got it. Now you're taking that energy I'm giving you and using it, more to help others. Not like I wasn't helping others at all before, but I was adding on to it. And now I'm going to give you more money. Okay, I'm babbling enough. Let's get back into the kishkes here. So that's the idea, is we have to do a righteous accounting of the upcoming year and how we want to improve our service of Hashem. Including, of course, the specific details of the 6 days of the work week, and then, of course, our rest on Shabbos. Including the fixing up and the completion of all the matters of our service in actuality in a state of ultimate completion. Yesh Lamar, there is to say, Sha'asiya Secheshbon Tzedek b'Shabbos Parshas Noach. Hashavar Rabbi Yisrael Shalad Barat Bafal Tzarek Lahois Ba'efon Mitzayim the Toichma Shalad Barat Bafal. That the righteous accounting that we do on Shabbos Parshas Noach for the first week of our actual service in the world and actuality, this must express the service we did in actuality. Specifically in what we are doing to reveal this level of godliness that is above the world, Havaya, in the world, which is Elohim. In other words, I tell people all the time, religion is has a negative connotation to it. Judaism isn't a religion. It's after all these other religions started sprouting up, so they kind of lumped them all together and said, Judaism and Christianity, Islam, those are all religions. No. Judaism is about being God's partner in creation and taking a world that conceals him and revealing him in that same world that conceals him. In other words, God created the world with the name Elohim, and he concealed his true name, his true essence of Havaya in the name Elohim. And the Rebbe is saying now that our main work in the world that we have to do a righteous accounting on this week's Parsha of Shabbos Noach is, what did we do this week and what are we going to do this upcoming year to reveal Havaya in Elohim, to reveal God in a world that conceals him. That's the work. That is the ultimate work of creation, by making a dwelling place by God below. In this physical world, we have to transform a mundane physical world into a godly world. Reveal God in a world that conceals him. Oh, and this, how do we do this work? The Rebbe says, it's emphasized through the main avoda of tshuva. Tshuva You ask your typical Jew, what is religious Jew? What is religious? I don't like the word. Observant Jew. What does tshuva mean? They say tshuva means repentance. No, tshuva means return. It's not something we do once a year on Rosh Hashanah, Erev Yom Kippur. Tshuva means to return. That means every minute of the day we have to pause and say, "Am I returning?" The word "return" means you're returning to where you were before. In other words, am I returning to my real work in this world by revealing God in this world, by doing what God wants of me, following the instruction map that God gave me? Or am I continuing to do what I want to do? The way to reveal God in a world that conceals him is by doing tshuva, is by returning to what we need to be doing. שהתשובה הוא באופן שהוויה נעשה אלוקיך. Return to Hashem, to Havaya, your God. ועוד שלמוס התשובה ביום כיפורים שסיועים בחויסמה באמירת זין פעמים הוויה אלוקים, as we said earlier. And the complete tshuva we say on Yom Kippur is when at the end of the prayer when we say Havaya Elokim. And this is by doing a righteous accounting. And in even a higher level, as we will explain. Again, Havaya Hu Elokim, that is the work. That the God that is above the world gets revealed in a God, by the level of God that is in this world. Zion. V'hakdama. Okay, let's a beginning, a preface to digging deeper into this. Haklal kol Yisrael hazachas kashura. First of all, the Rambam explains that every Jew is presumed to be kosher, meaning we should always look at our fellow with a good eye. We should never look at someone and be like, "Oh, look at that Rasha," or at ourselves, right? And look at ourselves and be like, "Oh, why bother?" It's like, tell this story. When I was in yeshiva in Israel, we used to do Mifsaim every Friday in Tel Aviv. Interesting place, wannabe South Beach. And you have all of these people, these Yidden Jews, who are not exactly living according to the optimal way that God wishes of us to do so. And I'd go up to these Jews and, put on tefillin. Like, the guys are covered in tattoos. They're telling me, you don't know what I did last night. You don't know where I went to. You don't know what kind of club you know what that was this and that. So I'm like, I don't care. God doesn't care. It doesn't make it. Who cares what you did last night? Right now, you're a Jew. You're a brand new creation. Put on tefillin. In other words, one of the reasons we don't grow and we don't improve in our lives is we're stuck in a negative tape or loop, if you will, of our past. And we're constantly all the time beating ourselves up for what we didn't do right or we did wrong, and we have guilt, and I can't believe I did that, and I'm a bad, I'm in this, and we start developing a view of ourselves that is less than favorable, to say the least. Or in the opposite, more than favorable. Oh, I don't need God, I'm such a successful businessman, and I have such everything so wonderful, who needs that? Whatever it is, the point is that we have to wipe that away and realize right now we're kosher. God created us brand new. Everything's good. Now we've got to make a decision what we're going to do at this moment. And the Rebbe said mainly this applies to others. But when it connected to yourself, in the smuch hazachas kashur. Okay, so the Rebbe says when it comes to others, we should always look with a favorable eye. We should always look at another Yid as they're kosher. In other words, never look negatively. But when it comes to ourselves, we have to be a little bit more critical. Not to the point that we should get stuck in our past and not want to change. And the Rebbe says, but we have to do an honest accounting. In other words, we have to take a deeper look and examine our thoughts, speech, and deeds, which reflect all of our sfirot, or all of our attributes or manifestations of how we connect to God in the world. The Kabbalah asks the Tikkun LaHashalim, הדרושים, הטיפון בשלמוס. ואוי והוא בעיקר לתקנה והשלמה במעשה בפועל. במעשה הוא עיקר. And the Rebbe says, and the most important thing about doing a righteous accounting of our thought, speech, and deed, of where we're holding in our life, is so we can do tshuva. Because the ma'aseh hu ikar, the main thing is the deed. In other words, it's not that complicated. I didn't say it's easy, but it's not that complicated to do tshuva. Just stop doing what's wrong and start doing what's right. Right now. You don't have to sit and, yeah, but you don't know what I did. Nah, forget about all that. Right now, make a decision. You know what? I'm going to put on tefillin tomorrow. I'm going to eat kosher food tomorrow. I'm going to keep the Shabbat. God doesn't care what you did before. If the past is done, it's finished. You can't take it again. Go back. No. Work on improving who you are and what you're doing in this world now. The tikkun b'maaseh b'for b'noga v'hashar the tshuva atzmoi, and the fixing in actuality is connected and relevant to tshuva itself. The af she'ikar tshuva b'lev, and the main part of tshuva is the heart. That's what God wants. He wants the hearts. He wants our efforts. He wants to see us and feel us putting forth effort. We're going to screw up every time, guaranteed. We're not tzaddikim. We're going to make mistakes, and we'll continue to make mistakes. The question is, what are we going to do? Are we going to delude ourselves and every time we screw up and ignore it and pay attention and not pay attention to it, pretend it's not there, pretend? No. We have to start acknowledging what's going on in here and in our actions. Taking a look, saying, you know what? I spoke badly about that person. That was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. You know what? I wasn't completely honest right then. I need to work on that. I need to do it. And we got to examine what's going on in our lives. We can't just, that's not, and not pay attention. Be aware. Be aware of what's going on inside of you and fix it. And how do you fix it? Tshuva. Tshuva. Your heart. You don't know how much pleasure it causes God when we're stuck, when we're really sitting there vacillating and contemplating what to do in a situation. This is what I should do, but that's what I want. We're wrestling. God's like, wow, this is amazing. One of my children is struggling. They want to connect to me. Look how they're struggling. And when we ultimately make the right decision, this is like, wow, the gates of heaven are open at that point in time. Okay. Psak in a Gemara, Sha'ide Arhor, Shuva Nase Sadiq Harizet Bifne Shaharhor Shuva Shabale Ubofen Shabakla Hemshek La'achazet the Masa Bafwa. So the main thing is the heart. And that will lead us to actual deed. In other words, to really do tshuva, you got to really feel bad about the things you're doing wrong. You got to acknowledge that there's a God, and that God created the world, and He created us, and He created the world with a set of rules, and He gave us a Torah, and He said, here is right, here is wrong. Do this, don't do that. And we have to take it to heart and acknowledge when we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And it needs to bother us enough to do something about it. And this is mainly focused in tshuva between man and his fellow. K'mosh kasuv hashiv as a gazila asher gazel. The dugma gazila with the quote. And the tailo shalom with the ochel shalom. Gazila ha'ani b'veseicham. I'm just gonna read this and then say it outside. Gam shehasiva shalom hasir לא ישלם היה בפני שהוא אסך ותורב לעניין של מצווה. וודאי שלא להתכן לפגע בו חס ושלום, או כמה כהן, כיוון שפועל עשה החברות, נפילס הרוח, צריך ניסיון ורצון. Okay, so the Rebbe says the main thing that we need to focus on fixing up, and it's very interesting because remember, this is Parshas Noach. This is the week of work. Noach gave us farming tools. Noach is menucha, it's rest. Everything we're learning right now is a segula, is a, such not a good word in the English language for segula. It's a, I don't know how to say segula, it'll come to me in a second. But it's it's a path to succeed in bringing menucha into our life. So just pay attention to what we're talking about, to what the Rebbe is saying right now. Because he opened up by saying that this whole Sikha and the whole Greek's Parsha, Noach is about Menucha, and Shabbos is about Menucha. And the idea is to bring Menucha into our lives. So the Rebbe is giving us ha'aras, he's giving us teachings on how to do that. And he's saying now that Noach, saying now, we're talking about tshuva, one path for sure to bring peace into your life and to bring rest and calmness into your life is by doing tshuva, by revealing and connecting to your true essence of who you are. And the Rebbe says he's emphasizing now the specific tshuva between man and man. In other words, if someone steals something from another person, you've got to make it whole by them. In other words, if you rip off a guy in business for $1,000, and then you turn to God and say, I'm so sorry, please forgive me. God will forgive you, but he can't fix unless the other person forgives you. In other words, the blemish of your soul remains until you have a tikkun with that person. So you need to go to that person and say, look, I'm sorry. I stole from you. I did wrong. Please forgive me. How can I repay you? What can I do? And the Rebbe said sometimes this is a very gentle thing. It's not necessarily money. And he gives a very minor thing that you may think that's considered stealing. You know what it is? You walk up to someone, or someone comes up to you and say, hey, shalom, hi. And you walk by them and don't say hi back. You just stole from them. You stole from them. They said hi, and you didn't return the hello. That's considered stealing. So again, just to be hypersensitive and aware of our relationships with others. כיוון שחשבון הצדק הוא באופן שמפשפש בפרט העניינים, משתדל ועוסק בתיקונים במעשה בפועל. הרי הוא מעמוד במצב של מדידה הגבלה לפי ערך ביחס למדינה הגבלה, פרט העניינים שמנוח, ועוסק בתיקונים שלהם, כל פרטי ופרטי כל עניינים. Okay. And since that this righteous accounting is in such a way that it must be necessary to examine all the details of your behavior and of your actions. 1 second, I just want to take a quick look at our time. To make sure we're on time. Yeah, we should be fine. Okay. All the details of your actions. I need to work in fixing up in actuality the things that you've messed up, if you will. And this is a situation in within the boundaries and limitations, according to and related to the boundaries and limitations and specific things that you're fixing up in every single detail. Let me keep reading, then I'll explain. ישנו אופן נעל שריסה, שהתמורות בפשטוש, שמפשפש במעשה, הרי הוא מסעלה לדרגה בעולם נעל שריסה, יהיה יסבונך לגמרי בתפילה בתורה כולו ובדרך ממילא יחדו יתחוי, הסברתי לו העניינים הבלתי רצויים. כיוון שמעט אור דוחה הרבה חושך. לחץ כמה וכמה הרבה אור. אבל לאידך באופן זה לפי מודגש התיקון והשלמות העניינים בפרטים, כיוון שאין לו עסק להם. Okay, so the Rebbe is talking about literally fixing up in all the details of our lives and in the world. And there's a basic concept in Chassidus and Kabbalah that a little bit of light pushes away a lot of darkness. How much more so, a lot of light pushes away a lot of darkness. And this is the whole, we know that there's three pillars that the world stands on: Torah, Tefillah, and Gemot Chasidim. Prayer, Torah, and good deeds. And every one of those things add light. And the Rebbe is going to bring out another point now. Let me go inside. V'hashlemus amitis hu v'chibur beis amaydas gam yichad. Shev'cheshvon hatzedek v'tikun v'hashlemus ha'ininim ha'pratim ha'dev sh'oischech behem. Hu mitoich atnua shal ta'alud l'daga na'ishoyse. V'hamshichei v'hizgalud l'galoyse v'medina ha'bala. V'kol pratim v'pratim l'fi ha'ininim. Shev'o'efen ameti'im l'daga sa'ayoyna. Alderek bedugmas ובהיצם להמשכי בגיל לשם הוויה בשם אלוקים שנעשה בעבודה בפועל בפרשת נוח. Okay. And the true completion is unification of these two advantages together. One, we're talking about this tremendous godly energy that's above the world. And then we're also talking about fixing up all the details within the boundaries and limitations of the little minutia of the world. So the Rebbe says, first of all, we have to do a righteous accounting. And we have to fix up and complete all the specific details by working in those details, by dealing with those details in such a way that we're entering into them and bringing them and moving them into a higher purpose, if you will, a higher advantage. And then drawing down and revealing into all the details in such a way of even a higher level. And an example we see from this is drawing down and revealing the name of Havaya, the name Elohim. And then doing this service in actuality, and this is connected to Parshas Noach. In other words, that we're in a world where we're lahavdil. They say the devil is in the details, right? But we like to say God is in the details. That's often our success and failure results in the minutia, in dealing with the details of everyday life. And there's countless successful business people will tell you that that they've learned to dig deeper, to look deeper into realities of anything, of whatever. I don't want to get off topic, but you have a business person that buys widgets and he buys them for $1. And you got to find a way to buy them for 90 cents. And you find a guy who knows how to manufacture them for 80 cents. And you find a guy who could do one step of the manufacturing that's not necessary, and now he does it for 78 cents. In other words, you're taking something and you're getting into the details of that thing. And in order to fix up the details of that thing, you have to draw down a godly energy that's completely from above it. So in other words, we work in these two dimensions, and these are the two dimensions of Havaya and Elohim. You have Elohim, which is the boundaries and limitations of this world, which is the physical details of creation. In other words, God doesn't want us going into the world and just breaking things and just, saying, destroying the world that God created, if you will. I don't mean necessarily in a negative way. I mean, even in a positive way. I mean, in other words, you have to work within the channels of nature, if you will. But the idea is to take these channels of nature and reveal godliness within the channels of nature. And we see Chabad is a perfect example of this. There's over 5,000 Chabad houses throughout the world. And you see the success in some of these operations that are on a first name basis with the mayor, with the governor. They're doing huge Hanukkah menorah lighting in the middle of the town. They didn't just, no one's looking. Let's go with a bulldozer, knock over the stage, and put our menorah where the Christmas tree was. And let's do it really quickly so no one sees, and we'll light it and get out of here. That's kind of breaking the world. Instead, they brought it into the minutia of the world. They went according to the channels. They go according to the channels of the world and revealing this godly energy in the tiniest little details. In addition to this, Ragash, Shaltsa'ar Umirirais, Kutsa'oi, Becheshbon Hatzedek, that in addition to this, there's a connection that we have to remove or negate the bitterness that takes place in our Cheshbon Tzedek, in our righteous accounting. Kevan Shenirgash Etzlei Be'ikr. To nuance his others, the darkest knowledge Joycer, because the main point is to elevate these things into a higher reality. And draw down and reveal in the specific details of your work in this world, but only in a deeper way. And even deeper, to emphasize the intention of descending into the situation and fixing it up in order to bring about completion through tshuva. I'll finish the paragraph, then I'll elucidate a bit. In actuality, Teichav is kasheris shel Yehudi, gam HaKadosh Baruch Hu, gam b'hayesod b'mitzad iroid. Literally, that the strength and the connection of a Jew with God, and also in the situation of his descent, of where he has fallen, if you will. Al derek b'dugmas hashleimus t'shem havaya, k'shenimshach u'mizgal b'flo gam b'shem Elokim. An example of this is the name Havaya, that, if you will, descended or fell or went down and enclosed itself in the name Elokim. Lo'chein nase cheshbon tzedek. And therefore it's necessary to do a righteous accounting. The tshuva metoich regash so simcha, but it must be in a way where you enter into it of joy and pleasure. Okay, so what's going on? Let me just sum up. So I'm trying to think of a good example. Nothing's coming to my brain, but just for example. We're talking about this concept that we have to constantly do tshuva. We have to do a constant cheshbon tzedek, a righteous accounting of what's going in our life, and our thought, speech, and deed, and what behavior we're doing incorrectly, especially to others. In other words, sniff out the blind spots, if you will. We all have blind spots, right? We all have these, where we're unaware. In fact, the reason that people are able to get taken advantage or manipulated is because they're not aware. There's a lack of a certain self-awareness of what's going on in certain capacity of their lives. So what we need to do is and Torah and mitzvahs are very instrumental in this, because the more Torah we learn and the more mitzvahs and the more prayer we do, they're like a flashlight, if you will. And that light helps us kind of search out the dark places in our brain or our heart, and that we're not aware of, right? It's like, you ever have these like moments where you have like a moment of clarity where you're like, wow, I'm really an asshole. like you do something that's maybe not optimal, and then you're not aware of it, and afterwards you realize, and you're like, how did I do such a thing? The more we learn, the more we have the ability to be an observer to our own lives, if you will. We kind of can remove it out of ourselves, connect to this godly energy, and then search out what's going on inside and figure out where we need to work in our lives. Now we take those points, that minutia, those details, and we have to get into them, and we have to figure out a way how to fix them up. And how do we fix them up? We have to bring godly energy and godly light. In Chassidus, it's talk about removing the spark. The Baal Shem Tov talks about that there's three stages in everything we're doing, right? It's all the time. These three stages can help us tremendously in every aspect of our life. It's basically surrender, separation, and sweetening. Surrender means things aren't working in our lives, right? There's a friction. There's we're not, it's not working, whatever it is. So we have to stop. So pause. Wait. God is not allowing this to work for one reason or another. Why does God keep closing this door in front of me? He's talking to me. God is trying to send me a message. What is it? You may not know. But the first thing is to surrender. It means put your head down. It's humility, humbleness. Take our ego, and our ego is telling us what I want. Put our head down and say, hold on a second. Something's not working here. What does God want from me? Why is this? What is God trying? What is He trying to communicate to me? Because often the messages are subtle, and we can't hear them if we're so filled with ourselves. So we surrender, and then we separate. We've got to pull ourselves back from the situation. And it's, again, very important to learn a lot of Torah, because the more Torah you learn, the more you connect to your essence, and the more you can remove from that ego, if you will, to see what's going on. And when we separate and we pray a lot to God and ask for a lot for divine assistance, and then we'll find the godly spark, the energy that I can now go back into that situation or challenge, whatever it is, with a new lens, with a new energy, with a new way of approaching it. And that spark of godly energy is what we bring back into the reality. And the Rebbe says it's important that when we do this righteous accounting and we find errors, and we will, when we find what we're doing wrong or not optimally, if you will, we shouldn't get depressed. We should, in fact, be besimcha. Because instead of saying, wow, this remind me of in the Big Lebowski, where the dude's like, whoa, my I don't remember the word he said. It was like, my process of thinking just got so confused right here. It's like we have that realization that something's not working, right? Like, instead of beating ourselves up and being like, oh, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I keep doing this. Why am I doing this? Why is this not working? I can't believe no, have rahmanas, be compassionate upon yourself, and have simcha and pleasure, because it's a great gift from God when you're able to figure something out, no matter how long it takes. If it's a week, if it's a month, if it's a year, if it's 50 years. If you're 50 years old and you just figured out something in your life, you could be depressed and be like, I can't believe I'm 50 and I just figured this out. The Rebbe says, no, you should be besimcha. You should be happy and be like, wow, thank God. I could have died and never figured this out. Now I figured this out. This is great. Let me take that energy, that godly energy, and get back into the details and fix them. I hope I'm not making this more confusing than it is. I'm hoping to actually make it clearer. So, okay, Ches, let's continue. And this is emphasized even more in our service on Shabbat. And as we said, the whole Parshas Noach is connected to Shabbat. Noach is menucha, rest. That the whole point of Shabbat is Yom HaShvi'i, Shabbos L'Havaya Lokecha. On the seventh day, Hashem created. It says Hashem, your God. Shenimshach Mizgala Shem Havaya b'Shem Elokim, and he drew down and revealed the name Havaya, the name Elokim. Mavor b'Drushi Chassidus is explained in the teachings of Chassidut. But Perush the Kasuv v'Yochol Elokim HaYom HaShvi, and this is on God in the day of the seventh day. Kalasa Mechinas u'Mevdargas Midas had Simsum Hester Hashem Elokim Nivshak Vizgal Hashem Havaya Shabbat Havaya. That literally, that this is a level of the measurement of the Tzimtzum, which is the Tzimtzum is the process that God used for turning spirituality to physicality, basically by taking his divine energy and concealing and contracting it through a multiple stages of curtains, drawing off the light and closing off the light, drawing it off and just weakening it, if you will, to the point it was able to enter into a world in a state of concealment. And this is the name Elohim. And in Shabbat, God reveals his name Havaya. In Shabbat, what we're really resting from is the Tzimtzum. We're really resting from the 6 days of the week that conceal God in Elohim. And we're enjoying the pleasure and the rest of the day where God's name Havaya is revealed. And this is also emphasized in the Tshuva of Shabbat. We know Shabbat, Oisir, is Tashev. It's the same letters of Tashev, which literally means return, because we're returning to Havaya. At Tshuva, the Shabbos, he Tshuva Ila'ah. And this is an upper level of Tshuva, Tshuva Ila'ah, a higher Tshuva. A Tshuva that is not a Tshuva of, a lower Tshuva is basically you're getting out of the dirt. You're no longer going to dirty up your soul, and instead you're going to take the clean path or the godly path. Higher tshuva is you're already out of the muck, but now you're returning to your essence and your source above. And this is a tshuva that always says besimcha rabba, that is done with tremendous joy. Kivan she'ena ba'ofen shel his'askut this is not an elevating and fixing of matters that are undesirable. That's a lower tshuva. Rather, it's a higher elevation, even more. But it's through the dwelling and working in learning Torah. The revealed Torah, which is the Gemara and the Halach and the Mishnah. And the Rebbe says, and especially the Pnimius Torah, which is what we're learning now, the Chassidus and the Kabbalah, because that is ultimately the true essence of God. In other words, in the Gemara and Halacha, we're taught how to live, how to act, what rules we have to follow, and we do it. We live like Jews, we act like we're supposed to. But Chassidus and Kabbalah connect us to the very essence of God and his true will as to why he did all this, which is much higher than the mitzvahs and much higher than the Torah. It's his very essence. And this brings tremendous simcha, tremendous joy, because it's achdus, it's oneness of connecting to our source. But taklas is shleimus in an ultimate and complete way, literally to where we, by learning Hasidus and learning Kabbalah, we reach a state of literally spirit to spirit, ruach to ruach, that literally we cling, our being literally clings to God in a state of return, like our souls were before they came into this world. A unification that is wondrous, and there's nothing quite like this. There's no great, I can tell you guys, girls, whoever's listening, there's no greater joy and no greater pleasure in this world. And I'm speaking from experience. I have dabbled prior to this this in my previous life with many pleasures, from the finest foods to the finest cars and restaurants and nightclubs and all the material enjoyment of this world. And I can tell you, there's no riches, there's nothing in this world that brings joy and pleasure like reconnecting to your Creator. Then literally feeling God present with you in your life. And those moments when you're just at a state of oneness with God, nothing in the world could come close. And how do we do this? We do this from learning Chassidus. We do this from learning the depths of the Torah, the secrets of the Torah, the essence of our soul connecting to the essence of God. Even more than this, you call the Gamri HaTorah. Not only in this, our entire existence becomes nullified when we connect to God through the Torah. The Torah is the bridge to connect our finite beings with an infinite God. According to an example, this is a taste of what will take place in the future to come. Then literally the entire world will be filled with the occupation of God, like the ocean, like the water covers the ocean bed. In addition to this, Shabbos Parshas Noach Mudgashes V'Yoseret Shuva B'Simcha. And Shabbos Parshas Noach, it emphasizes even more that Shuva should be done with Simcha. It's so important. We should never get to a point where we're despondent, or that's the Yetzer Hara. Wow. So interesting. This week's Sikha of Noach, we're learning about the Mabul, about the flood, and it's been dumping rain this whole week. It's like the flood. God forbid. The Yetzer Hara, one of his greatest tools is to make us sad. We'll do something wrong, or we try to do the right thing. It doesn't work out the way we want, or we know we could have done better, whatever. And the Yetzer Hara starts beating us. You know, it's, oh, you're no good. You're worthless. I can't believe you did it. And that negative voice just keeps hammering at us. And the next thing we're depressed. When we're depressed, can't serve God with joy. Not that we should be celebrating when we screw up, but real tshuva is it's I did wrong. You feel it in your heart. It bothers you. It bothers you. You turn to God. I'm sorry. Please help me do better. Please help me fix my ways. And you work on becoming better. And that's it. That bothering, gone. It's remove it. Get it out. And we got to focus on doing tshuva b'tzimcha. Kevan sheboim ze'ata mechodesh Tishrei. Since we are literally coming out of the month of Tishrei, Ruba Ma'oidois, which is filled with holidays. Shein Oimrim Tachanun, and we don't say Tachanun. We did today. We came back to Tachanun after almost a month of no Tachanun. Ad Tziyoyim Shel HaChodesh, and the completion of the month. Shvetchilim Lomar Tachanun V'Chodesh Mar Cheshbon. In Regalim Adayin, or in Mirasa Tachlin, there's no holidays in this month. We say Tachlin all month. Nevertheless, we have to emphasize even more the simcha in our service of tshuva. Tata Shlifnei Shabbat, especially as we find ourselves right before Shabbat. Test. You'll excuse me for 30 seconds. I gotta get some water. I'm very dry, but we're definitely on time for an on-time arrival. 2 minutes. Be right back. Okay, test. Argasha Yisira B'Chana B'Noga the Cheshbon Etzerek B'Shabbos Parshas Noach B'Shabbos Zu. And the Rebbe says this is especially relevant to that particular Shabbos that the Sikha was given on, which is the Shabbos of Daled Mar Cheshbon in 1992. Bagdama Shekivan She'ir She'id Kami Kadosh Mavachami Agmonasi Dereinu Shkabar Sioima Koninim Avoda Haklal Bam Tzuach Kaftori Oimdim Mochanim Kabal Bene Mashiach Tzikanu. The Rebbe says, as has already been announced and emphasized by the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe's predecessor, the sixth Rebbe of Chabad, who was the leader of the generation, that all of our service is finished, including also polishing the buttons, and we're standing ready to Kabbalah, to receive our righteous Mashiach the face of Mashiach in an inward way. Hari, Maskanat, HaCheshbon Tzedek, Sha'oisim b'yameinu edu, hu ha'techef miyad mamish tzricha, l'vo v'agula mitzvah shlema for mamish. And the Rebbe says that through our righteous accounting in these days, immediately it's necessary, it will cause to bring us to the true and complete redemption and actuality. So I'll let the Rebbe explain. I was going to get into it, but he's going to get into it now. So, but Pratis Yosher, more specifically, Gam Shiyada Enish Benafshi Ma'amodim Murasav Shiyes Hatlo Ininim Hatzrichem Tikun Enza Besira Chasrashem Edo Shel Nasi Doreno Shel Kavart Nishlama Oresa Mundi Bachanim the Kabal Benem Shiyes Tekiru. The Rebbe says the fact that each one of us still needs to do a tikkun and fix up what's wrong or what needs to be improved, if you will, for the of our individual service of God. This is in no way a contradiction to the statement of the previous Rebbe that we have already completed all of the work and we're literally standing ready to greet Mashiach, to welcome Mashiach. Ki havoda the klalis benishal b'Mashiach hadoros shetzarich lihiyois bezman hagalus kedei levod shleimas hagula is tiyama nishlema. That since the service in general of the Jewish people throughout the continuation of all the generations, it's necessary that to be in a time that was necessary in the time of the Galus, that this has already brought us to a state of completion, of the true and complete redemption, and the work is done. In other words, there's two concepts, and again, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because he's going to get into it, but there's prati and klalit. The Jewish people exist as a nation of one. All of us together literally are one nation, and that together, that each one of us affect each other, and more so than that, in addition to the Jewish people, we have the entire world and the nations of the world who are obligated to keep the 7 laws of Noach, their task, if you will, in this world that connects all of them to us and to God. But then we have the individual work. So in other words, when the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe says that all the work is done and we're literally ready to stand to greet Mashiach, it means that as a nation, the Jewish people have completed our mission in this world. There's nothing that is separating God from bringing Mashiach. We can't say that Mashiach is not here because enough Jews didn't do tshuva, because not enough Torah was learned, because there's not enough prayer, not enough tzedakah is being given. No. We have completed all the work that is incumbent upon us in our mission that we signed with God and our covenant and our agreement when we accepted the Torah on Mount Sinai. Everything is done. We're literally ready and standing to greet Mashiach. The only thing that we have to do an accounting on is not in our work in general, but in our specific work, each one of us. So the fact that each one of us needs to work on and improve our service of God is not a contradiction to the fact that all of us together as one nation have already completed our divine service that is necessary to bring Mashiach. גם אז חסר בעבודתו של פרט במשך בזמן שמסקרבת הגאולה מאיזו סיבה שתהיה. אז זה עניין פרטי שבוודאי סביבתו לכתוב מהשלם הזה. The fact that each one of us still has individual work that needs to be fixed up and completed. אבל אין זה גורע חס ושלום בגמר השלם אז מעשינו ונבסינו לכל ישראל של עינים מחנה לגאולה. This is not, God forbid, any obstacle or blockage to the complete service of our deeds and service of all the Jewish people throughout the generations, and that we are literally standing and prepared and ready for the redemption. And the Rebbe says that also the fixing up and the completion in all the details must be done in a way of simcha. He's emphasized this a few times in the Sikha. And this will bring us immediately to the true and complete redemption. In other words, we're coming out of the month of Tishrei, and the culmination of all the month of Tishrei, of all the holidays. But I didn't say this inside. I'm just explaining it a little bit more outside. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, it all reaches culmination of Simchas Torah. And Simchas Torah, the Torah is closed. We're dancing with a closed Torah. And we're singing and dancing and celebrating. We're not learning the Torah. We're celebrating being Jews. We're celebrating from the fact that God gave us this precious gift of the Torah. And with this precious gift, it's connecting us to God. And that is enough to be filled with joy. So when we do tshuva, when we're working and we're scoping out our individual shortcomings, if you will, it must be with simcha, with joy. We must enter joy in everything we're doing. And the Rebbe says, by doing this will bring us to the redemption. Because if we're sorrowful, if we're sad, that's not redemption. The Rebbe's a sikha in I want to say it's Memches, if I'm not mistaken, 1988. That's the only reason Moshiach is not here is because the Jewish people are not besimcha. We're not happy. We're kvetching. We're upset. I can't believe this. I can't believe that. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Hold on a second. The leader of our generation, who's been proven as a prophet, as brought down in the Rambam, has openly told us he's a prophet, has been acknowledged by thousands of others, Rebbes and Orthodox rabbis as a prophet. The Lubavitcher Rebbe told us that we are the generation that's going to greet Moshiach. That we are on the threshold, we are moments away from the full and final redemption. The ultimate culmination of all of creation, of the entire purpose of all of creation is unfolding in front of our eyes. And God chose every person in this generation not only to witness it, but to take an active part in bringing this redemption reality into the world. And it's happening right now. We're entering into an eternal world of joy, of wealth, of happiness, of health, of all revealed good. But we're upset because we didn't get a raise. We're upset over who's president. Or we're upset over the fact that we had to quarantine for 2 weeks. Or we're upset. We got to put things in perspective. And if we look at the goodness and the joy, that should bring us to simcha. And that simcha alone will cause God to bring the redemption. When he sees us happy, excited, joyful, anticipating the redemption, that's what he will do. Bring us the redemption. Explain it in a different way. Since literally we are one completion, the Jewish people, we see this in each individual one of our existences, that a person is complete, that we have 248 limbs and 365 sinus or main connecting tendons. And they're connected to the 248 positive mitzvahs and the 365 prohibitive mitzvahs, making up together 613. Hein begashmios v'chesroin dahaprat ukama muchash o chilui kol v'chitzoni v'av v'ever prati shehetikon aydei refuah kala mucha kamosh kotu rafa and the reshut the refuah klo michad refuah sha'aydet shuvah. We see every single one of our functions of our body, and if God forbid someone gets sick, it's connected to a deficiency in our soul, and everything is connected as it is connected below to above, every one of these channels, if you will. And the ultimate path to health is through tshuva. And ultimately, the complete refuah is okeres es hechoili in the Farah, to remove the sickness, if you will. In other words, the Rebbe is saying tshuva is the path to healing the world. Pretty much emphasizing in this week's Shira in a prophetic way of what's going on in the world right now. That every day we're reading from Dr. Fakakti, you want to listen, you don't want to listen, he's full of crap. He's not full of crap, he's mostly full of crap, but it's a different story. It's up, it's down, it's sideways, it's more, it says everyone's panicking, oh my God. I'm not saying that Corona is not real. I'm not saying it's nothing to be concerned about. But in the meantime, what are they doing? They're just making people frightened and concerned. Imagine every 2 to 3 times more people die every day from heart disease, from overeating and cholesterol than Corona. Imagine if every day right now, all over the news, all you saw was heart disease takes another life. Here is Joe Babalu. He ate 14 Whoppers in the last 3 days. He has just dropped dead. Stop eating fast food. I was like, everyone would be panicking right now. No one would be going to fast food restaurants. No one would be eating any type of cholesterol. My God, I'm going to die of heart disease. We'd be freaking out. That's what they're doing. They're causing mass panic. They're taking this virus and they're using it as a political tool. I don't want to get into the whole thing about Corona. Yes, it's real. Yes, we have to be careful. Yes, we have to have social distancing. But the point of the matter is it's just they're causing fear for no reason. No one has given us any plan whatsoever on how this is going to go away. Social distance. I know people that are social distancing. They've been locked in the corner of their closet. They've got 42 masks and 12 things that are in hazmat suits, and they get Corona. And then I know husbands and wives sleeping in the same bed and swapping bodily fluid when one has it and the other hasn't gotten it in months. How do you explain this? Again, I don't want to get bogged down in the Corona. The point is that everyone's missing the point. Stop focusing on this little tiny thing and what it's causing, because there's so much worse things out there that are killing us daily that no one's even paying attention to. Tshuva. We need to do tshuva. The world needs to acknowledge and recognize there's a God. Again, I say this thousands of times. Corona. Corona means crown, coronation. The second, right now, if everyone just paused and went, hold on a second. Let's forget about Wuhan. Let's forget about Dr. Fakakti. Let's forget about Trump or Biden or mask or no mask. This disease couldn't have come into the world if God didn't allow it to happen. God must be sending us a message. Maybe he wants us to make him king instead of Netflix. Maybe God's a little bit more important than video games. In other words, we just have to do tshuva. We just have to collectively turn to God and say, enough. Redeem us. Take us out of this mess. You're the boss. You're in charge. We want you, God. Yes, we want you. We want you to redeem. So Moshiach would come. And that's the key. The key to refuah is tshuva. If you take anything out of the sikha, the key to bringing health and restoring health in our individual lives and in the world at large is tshuva. Return to who we are, return to why we're here, return to God. ואם הדברים אומרים בזמנו של כבוד הקדוש האדמו"ר הנשיא דורנו בחיים חיוסי בעמדין על אחוז כמה וכמה אחרי שעברי כמה עשירי שנים יוסי 40 שנה נותן השם לכם לב לדעת ועיניים לראות ואוזניים לשמוע. And the Rebbe says, how much more so when the Frierdiker Rebbe told us that we're already finished all our work and we're literally standing, waiting, ready to greet Moshiach, our righteous Redeemer. How much more so does it take place now in our generation, after 40 years of a continuation of the Frierdiker Rebbe's leadership? Now that God has given us eyes to see, a heart to know, and ears to hear. Lachas kama kama, you know what, I just realized we started late because I was talking to myself for 15 minutes. So I really do everything. We start at 8:30 and we end at 11. It's a very long, intense, in-depth sikha. Call the kavod to anyone who's listening, who tunes in for even a little bit, because there's tremendous, nothing to do with me, tremendous energy from the Rebbe coming through these sikhas, and we're bringing Moshiach into the world by learning them. And by the way, we're now on YouTube as well, so you don't have to be part of our Facebook group. Anyone who knows anyone who would benefit or enjoy from these, please pass on information every Tuesday, 8:30 in the evening. Now let me jam and get through the rest of the sikha. So bear with me while I start learning a little bit inside and then paraphrase outside. And with God's help, we will finish on time. Okay. I'm actually going to skip that one part right there where the Rebbe is referring specifically to that year. And the Rebbe says like this, just to end it up. And the Rebbe says, for sure, and remember the sikh was given 28 years ago. For sure, we've already reached all the ends. And we've already done tshuva, the Rebbe says. And everything now this is a very out-of-the-box statement, if you will, if I could say such a thing about the Rebbe. And now, everything is dependent on Moshiach himself, which means how much more so we need to scream out to God, we want Moshiach now. That's what we have to do. Enough with thinking that salvation is going to come from one of the presidential candidates or from a vaccine or from moving to another country. None of that. Only redemption, only Moshiach. That's what we have to scream out to Hashem. Okay, Yud. We got a little asterisk. We're cruising into the end of the sikha. The hemshech maduba le'el oidris v'cheshbon hatzedek mo'miuchad b'kasher v'hashem v'zlebu'uda yesh lo orer al derech v'ispa v'zchirois v'hadi v'yidoi b'kidus levana. Okay, sheshayach v'yisur le'hatreichan e'ninim ha'miron le'el ha'kalakamen v'hakdama. So the Rebbe says now, and again, I'm going to paraphrase so we can finish on time, but he's referring to the importance now of one of the things that brings about the redemption is adding on and doing Kiddush Levana with good Kavanah, the blessing of the moon, every single month. That the cycles of time are brought about through the sun and the moon. Brachas Kedush Levana Hazak Mizman Nitain Lahem Shalo Yishna Es Tafkidim Hazak Hu Hadavar Kavua the Shemesh B'Yoyim the Reach B'Halayla. God literally put the sun to rule by day and the moon to rule by night. Zman Nitain Lahem Tahainu Zaman Sivoy L'Gilgal Labana Kaftres Yud Bimel Yud Beis L'Shinatzach Yisiv L'Gilgal HaChama B'Shasa Yom Onavim L'Kolom Yichad Hasera HaKavua D'Chidush Labana She'eno B'Hamila Kol Yimei HaChodesh Ela B'Matzah D'Chodesh L'Chodesh B'Matzah Gamri. After talking about the cycle of the moon, how it repeats itself, it repeats every month with 29 or 30 days. And the importance of the blessing of Kiddush Levana that should be sent by every Yid, every single month, the blessing of the new moon. Literally, it says our rabbis teach us whoever blesses the moon every single month literally is receiving the face of the Shekhinah, of the divine presence upon you. The Jewish people, even if we merited only once a month to welcome the new moon, the face of the moon, excuse me, which is the Shekhinah, which is God's divine, manifestation, if you will. You see that it says that the Jewish people are likened to the moon, and in the future to come that we will be renewed like the moon. And also there's a connection to David HaMelech and the moon, which is likened to the king of Israel and Moshiach. And then the Rebbe says, therefore, it's important that when we bless the moon, we should do so with great joy and dancing, and because it's similar to the simcha that we have at a wedding, because we're celebrating us reconnecting to God, and it's a foretaste of what will be when Mashiach comes. Okay, Yud Aleph. He's going to the Adoras Kabbalah Chassidus. Explain now even deeper according to Kabbalah and Chassidus. The Vana Kai al Shviras Hamalchus. The Leis La Megamara Kulam Makablas Oidus Bachama Machinazah Shemesh Havaya. That the moon is the sphere of Malchus, and the sun is like this the partsuf, the six spheres of Zah, of Chesed through Yisoid. And just like Zah, Zera Anpin gives its light and energy into Malchus, the sun gives its energy into the moon. Shemesh Magen Havaya Elokim, or Bizeh, Eshino Biur HaLevana, Ba'ifin Kabbalas or Makarim Oifen Shacham Gilui, D'Shem Havaya, D'Shem Elokim. See Levo, Shmezah Penimis Levana. In the future to come, we will receive the innerwards aspect of this. And that the moon will no longer be diminished like the sun, and in fact, that the moon will reach its state of completion. And the revealing of the name Havaya and the name Elokim will reach its state of completion. In other words, that the moon and the sun will be equal, the receiver and the giver. The Remez Klaudos Marasem Avresan calls Marra Hagalu, Shaidizem Boyim Nagula Mitzvah Shlema, Shakabana Bazay, he last low dear Bataktaini, Shagam Boil Matak and Chain Takum Meno Main, Hester Oir Yisperech, Matsal Babrias Irish Elokim. Yimshak Misgalo Oiro Yisperech, Shema Vaye, Shu, Shema Etz, Shanasa, dear Lo Yisperech, dear Bataktani, right? Is it Nasa Nehaya? Literally, cannot be said above, but a little bit Kabbalistic and with Hasidic explanation that the ultimate goal is to reveal the name Havaya and the name Elokim. Havaya is literally connected to the sun or Zah, and Elokim to the moon. That the moon is diminished in the time of the exile, and that's the sphere of Malchus, which doesn't shine as brightly as the spheres of Zah. And the future to come, they will both have equal energy, if you will. Yud Beis. Al Pizeh Muvan Keshaoisim Cheshbon Tzedek Mesiyo Imay Shal Hashavua Harishon Davoda Ba'ilum Hashana Tishon Beis. They're in for lights. And the Rebbe says, and we see that we have to emphasize this completion of doing a righteous accounting in the end of Parshas Noach, which is the Shabbos of Parshas Noach. Especially in that year, the Rebbe said, which is Tufshin and Beis, which is a Rosh Hashanah Tahashanandi Flois Boy. I will show you wonders in everything. Boyim the Miskana She'ein Hadavar Tilui Ela B'Mashiach Tzikenu La'atzman. Very interesting. The Rebbe says that everything is dependent on Mashiach. That it's literally dependent on Mashiach. We have to scream out for Mashiach. Tzrik Hadavar Disbata but Tosafet zero is Hidra b'Kiddush Levana, and the Rebbe says we can bring about redemption swiftly through being more careful with the mitzvah of Kiddush Levana and doing it with a simcha. Shematidi, because it says in the future to come that the moon will be the moon will be renewed like the sun, like we said above, and the true redemption which takes place through Moshiach. And then we know in Kiddush Levana we speak about David HaMelech. It's connected to David HaMelech, which is Malchus, which is all the dynasties of Moshiach come from David HaMelech. More specifically, the Rebbe says we should be wearing our Shabbos garments. You should say Kiddush Levana in your garments that are fit to greet the king. That's why it's our custom to do it the first Shabbat after the seventh of the seventh day of the Hebrew month, every new month, because we're on Shabbos, Motzi Shabbat, we're already in our Shabbos clothes. And that's what I said. According to Kabbalah, we do it after the seventh day, but before the 15th. But we emphasize to do it the first Shabbos, Motzi Shabbat of the month. Exactly what I was saying right now, but Motzi Shabbat. Okay, but oy ve'ikar, and namely and mainly, Kiddush Levana metech kavana miucheres. The machar of the derez the fall techav miar bias David Mashiach. That Rebbe says we're talking about Kiddush Levana, the importance of doing Kiddush Levana and doing it with joy and simcha and dancing. And the Rebbe says, and that the most important thing is that when we do Kiddush Levana, we should do it with the intention that it's immediately going to bring us to redemption. That this is that we should be literally greeting the Shekhinah in redemption in Mashiach. Aino hispa drushi, because it's connected specifically Kiddush Levana to the redemption. The Sir Mechesman Kiddush Levana. That we have to request literally of God the redemption, and that's the most important thing. We have to demand that God brings Mashiach. Yud Gimel. Hirat Soin, and may it be Hashem's will. Even before we do Kiddush Levana and Chodesh Mar Cheshvan, which is this Motzi Shabbat. But Prat Bashana Zu, and specifically in this year, that both months of Cheshvan and Kislev are full months, full 30 days. In one continuation. And it's a hazaka to bring forth a year of complete months. This is hinted on the completion of the Jewish people that will take place in the future to come, that we will be renewed like the moon. And Hashem, your God, and will redeem us through David Melech Mashiach and through our righteous Redeemer. We ask David Melech Mashiach take on my mamish. And the coming of Mashiach should happen immediately, mamish. But pashtus and simply, should take of me out immediately. That literally, as we approach immediately in the time of Mincha and Parshas Lech Lecha, all our earth that Hashem shall take us to our land, to our Tzena Kedusha, to our holy land. Kivan Derecha Nasati Esa Eretz Mitzrayim Ad Anahar Hagadol Anahara Paras Esa Kanini Eskaniz Rekamoni. Will give us the final 3 lands that He promised us. The Eretz, then we'll have a complete all 10 lands. Our Tzena Kedusha Atzmai, and our holy land will be complete. Lech Menesoba Managva. That's Yerushalayim, and we will literally travel to Yerushalayim, to Har HaMoriah, to the Har HaMoriah. And to the place of the Mizbeach. And then we will have Kiddush Levana in a complete way. And we will literally receive the Shekhinah in a complete way. V'Elokim b'Tzion, and Hashem will return us to Tzion. Even more than us, Yirah al Pnei Ha'adayim, Havaya. We will literally see the face of our God, Havaya. And also we will see Havaya revealed in the name Elokim. And this is emphasized in Kiddush Levan, that Havaya is Elokim, and we will continue to go elevation after elevation, higher and higher. Zayin Pa'amim, 7 times. Havaya Elokim. As we say in Niras prayer Yom Kippur. Havayu Elokim, Havayu Elokim, Havayu Elokim, Havayu Elokim, Havayu Elokim, Havayu Elokim, Havayu Elokim. Neshana haba b'Yushalayim. We have the full Gizgalus of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach. And now, Yechi Adoneinu Moreinu Rebbe Melech HaMashiach Lemued. Hashem should bless all of us to do true tshuva, to connect to our true essence. The world should do tshuva. Everything should reconnect to where it's supposed to be, to Hashem, and Hashem must fulfill the promise he made to the Jewish people and to all of you, to all of the entire world, and bring Moshiach now. God bless you. Have a wonderful week. Moshiach now.